Pitcairn Islands, we knew very little about it, and it was almost impossible to get there. So we decided to go immediately. It was totally hypnotic. A place that looks like the ocean 1,000 years ago. Imagine how many hundreds or thousands of fish are there waiting to be discovered. And then we got a call that we didn't want to hear about. We fear that there have been some illegal fishing in these waters. This place is so unique, this place has to be protected. There is no other way. How many places like this we have on the planet? How many people have heard of, watched the mutiny on the Bounty? Of course, everybody. And the Bounty was a British ship that in 1787 was sent by the British government to Tahiti under the command of Captain Bligh. A bunch of sailors under the command of Christian Fletcher decided to organize a mutiny, and they took command of the ship. But Christian and the others were looking around for other islands until they found Pitcairn Island. And when they arrived to Pitcairn, they sunk the boat in what's known as Bounty Bay today. They burned the boat and it sunk. 200 years later, Pitcairn is still a very remote and isolated place. And we knew very little about Pitcairn, especially underwater. It is remote, it has uninhabited islands. We knew very little about it, and it was almost impossible to get there. So we decided to go immediately. And there are 4 islands on the Pitcairn Islands: Oino, Pitcairn, Henderson, and Ducie. And they belong to the UK. They are now an overseas territory of the United Kingdom. The 4 islands and the 200-mile exclusive economic zone around the islands. This is more than 800,000 square kilometers. And nobody had studied the deep sea around the islands. And Ducie is this atoll which is 300 miles east of Pitcairn Island, and it's one of the most isolated atolls on the planet, and it's the southernmost atoll in the world. So southernmost atoll in the world means that it is at the southern edge of the distribution of corals, which means that the conditions for coral growth are not optimal. So this is a place, like it's marginal for the existence of corals. So we were not hoping to find a nice coral reef. And when we jumped in the water, we couldn't believe it. Healthy, thriving corals covering most of the bottom. Especially this one, the most spectacular, this leaf coral, it was like a garden of pale blue giant roses, going to infinity. So you are sitting at 30 feet and looking horizontally at your diving buddy, how far your diving buddy can go before you lose sight of her. 75 meters, almost 240 feet. This is the clearest visibility ever measured in the Pacific. There are only a few places in Antarctica during the right season where the water is more clear. My colleague there, our underwater cinematographer, was at 100 feet deep, and he could still see 60, 70 meters, and all he could see were coral and coral and coral and coral. We have never seen this anywhere in the Pacific Ocean. 100% of the bottom, more than 100% of the bottom is covered by live coral, because you see all these corals growing on top of coral, right? So more than 100% of the bottom covered by live coral. In the Caribbean, on average, only 5% of the bottom is covered by live coral. The rest is covered by seaweed and slime that have overgrown and killed the corals. And over the corals, abundant fish, like this nanui, very curious fish, forming schools of thousands of fish. And sharks, lots of sharks. Like these great reef sharks and the white-tip sharks. The sharks are so abundant here that they account for 65% of the biomass. That means that if you take all of the fish out of the reef and weigh them, the top predators would account for 65% of that weight. To use a land analogy, imagine in Africa, that would be more than one lion per every zebra or wildebeest. This is what a pristine reef is like. And these sharks were very, very curious. And they came and bumped our cameras a few times. And think about this. These sharks can grow up to 25 years. These fishes have never seen a human before. They haven't been spoiled by bait or chumming or motors or noise. No, these are completely wild animals. And you jump in the water, you are surrounded by 10, 15 sharks and more come, and they are very curious but very cautious. That's why they get to live so old. That was a pristine coral reef at Ducie. Healthy corals covering all of the bottom, large fish, lots of sharks, clear water. We were so happy, so happy. The worst moment was when we had to come out of the water at the end of each dive. That was really we have to go. And we thought, okay, Ducie is pristine because it's so remote, it is uninhabited, and it's so far from the main fishing grounds. It's so remote that it's not profitable, it's not economical to make a fishing trip there. Right? So our question then was, is that unique to Ducie, or other uninhabited islands in the Pitcairn archipelago are also pristine? And we hoped that without humans, these islands would be pristine. So we went to Henderson next. And Henderson is about 10 miles long and 3 miles wide. And from a satellite photo, it looks flat and green. And this is a photo, a composite photo of 10 different photos. From the sea, it looks like a table. UNESCO designated Henderson a World Heritage Site, but they forgot about the waters surrounding the island, which are another heritage of humanity. It's an unbelievable place. Healthy coral reefs growing on these azure waters, and tell me who doesn't want to have this photo as a screensaver in the computer? So we jump underwater, and we find another paradise, full of top predators, full of sharks. And watching these sharks swim, patrol over the reef, looking for prey, was like watching an underwater ballet. It was totally hypnotic. And again, we were so happy. This is the thing that we love the most, being in a place that is completely untouched by humans, a place that looks like the ocean 1,000 years ago, a place where we are just visitors, who are allowed to just catch a glimpse of a world that is disappearing. And the sharks were very curious, but they were never aggressive, even though you might not think the same when you see the next little video. Damselfish, butterfly fish, moray eels, these large red snappers, which were very inquisitive. And probably the most exciting thing at Henderson was the sharks. The sharks were very curious, and they came to check us out very closely. Sharks are very curious, but they are cautious. Now, they surround you, they swim around you, and it takes a long time for them to get close. And it's always the younger ones who get a little crazy, and they are foolish, like every teenager. And they come and bump in the camera, and they get excited, but as long as you are cool and don't get excited, the sharks are going to leave you alone. But these guys are the fish that we fear the most. And the red snappers are famous among our team because over the years, they have come to beat our fins, our camera, our strobes, 2 earlobes, and my ponytail. They are really, really, really aggressive and curious. They don't call them snappers for nothing. And you can see the scratches on this guy. That was before we even get there. And Henderson is also another sign of the health of Henderson is that it's the only place where we found the Napoleon wrasse on every dive. The Napoleon wrasse is this huge, massive wrasse, the largest of the family of the wrasses, that can grow up to 6 feet and weigh 200 pounds. And they used to be common on all the shallow reefs of the Pacific. But they have been depleted everywhere because some Asians think that the lips of these fish are a delicacy. But fortunately, at Henderson, they still have a refuge. And not everything is large and big and impressive. There are some cute animals there too. And there are dozens of species of small fish that live inside the corals, hiding from the predators, like this inch-long coral croucher, which needs a kind of a shave. And the corals themselves are so extraordinary. On the east beach of Henderson, 20 meters depth, we found the largest coral we've seen on our expeditions. Probably 1,000 years old. So imagine when the Spanish conquistadores were sailing over those waters in the 1600s, that coral was already large and growing. And we were so happy, we were so excited, and then we got a call on the radio from Mike. A call that we didn't want to hear about. He found tons of trash on the beach at Henderson. Lots of plastic and mostly fishing gear. And you go to these remote islands, and every remote island we go to, we found trash on the beach. And we know that trash can travel long distances in the ocean, but the amount of fishing gear here really made us afraid that something was going on, that there might be some illegal fishing nearby. And we decided to check another island, Oino, which is the closest to a human population, to see if there was some fishing here. Henderson and Ducie are still pristine, but are they in danger? That was the question that we wanted to answer next. So we went to Oino, which is about 100 miles northwest of Pitcairn Island. And it's a typical atoll with a shallow lagoon surrounded by a coral ring and this beautiful island in the middle. And we explored the shallow reefs in the lagoon, and we found these wonderful habitats with giant clams, up to 9 giant clams per square meter, with these impossible colors, electric blues, electric greens, and these animals filter the water for a living. So that's what the water in these lagoons is, so crystal clear. And then, offshore, we found many more fish, like these barracuda, schools of 200 barracuda, here surrounding our cameraman, and lots of other predators, like these groupers, like the yellow-edged lyre-tail, with these impossible reds and greens. And some of these fish, you see them and you think, who painted this? This is impossible. Nature is just so incredible. But the most interesting fish that we saw was this one, the Titan triggerfish. The Titan triggerfish, very large fish, very shy, and here it's been cleaned by a little cleaner wrasse, although it is clear that what he needs is a marine orthodontist. But Pitcairn Islands is a British colony, English teeth. That was funny, but what was not funny was that we did not see sharks at Oino Atoll. That wasn't funny. Why we didn't see sharks on a remote, uninhabited island in the middle of the Pacific? And the only explanation is fishing. If you don't have fishing, these reefs are overflowing with sharks. If there are no sharks, if there are no large fish, it's because somebody has taken them out of the water. And we fear that there have been some illegal and unreported fishing in these waters. So Oino has been the first island victim of the human predation. Henderson and Ducie are still safe, but for how long? And Pitcairn, what about Pitcairn? You have a population of 58. they are fishing. But has Pitcairn suffered the same fate as Oino? So at the end of the expedition, after 3 weeks going around on these gorgeous places, we decided to go back to Pitcairn. And here you can see Adamstown, the only village in town where the 58 people live. 52 of them are descendants of the mutineers of the Bounty. And we were able to dive in the shallows, study the coral reefs, and we found great coral growth and lots of fish. But we saw no sharks at Pitcairn Island. At Ducie, in one dive, one day we saw 35 sharks, just swimming around. Pitcairn, in a week of diving, 3 times a day, 4 hours underwater, we didn't see a single shark. And talking to the locals, they reported that in the past, in the recent past, there have been fishing boats, fishing at night, offshore. They don't have the capabilities to go out and kick them out. They have seen these lights, these factory boats outside, Korean, Taiwanese, Japanese, some Spanish boats. And they call them on the radio, and they don't reply. So these islands are in danger. We wanted to do a final test. We have a final question. Okay, Ducie and Henderson are too far away. Nobody's fishing there. Oino is close to French Polynesia, so maybe you have some Polynesians going there to fish and they kill the sharks. The sharks have been eliminated over time around Pitcairn, probably by these illegal fishing fleets fishing at night. But what about all these seamounts? There are hundreds of ancient volcanoes in this exclusive economic zone, in this 200-mile zone. And some come close to the surface. Have they been fished? They are so far away from Pitcairn that who can know if a boat is fishing there? So we decided to go to the 40-mile reef, which is this reef. It's an ancient volcano. Now it's called a seamount that is 75 meters from the surface. And the locals have been there 3-4 times in their lifetimes. And they were fishing with hand lines, and they have never fished so much in their lives. And from that, we did other deep sea exploration. And that was the first time that anybody put a camera on the deep sea there. The drop cams are these big spheres of borosilicate that have a high-definition camera and LED lights inside. And they can be dropped to the deepest point in the ocean. We attach a little cloth bag with some fish bait. And basically, you drop the camera off the side of the boat at the spot that you decide. And we drop them from 75 to 1,600 meters. And we did 16 drops. So the camera goes to the bottom, and sometimes some sharks is excited. And once at the bottom, the camera is silent for 4 hours. The bait is attracting marine life. And then after 4 hours, the lights and the camera turn on. And then that's when the fun part starts. We see things like these deep sharks. At 40-mile reef, we saw the deepest coral reef on the planet. 75 meters, you have this growing, healthy coral reef. And that happens only because the waters at Pitcairn are gene clear, because it's this special place in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This false cat shark, only known from a few individuals in the Atlantic and the Pacific. That was a squid that didn't like us. And the best part is when the camera goes to the surface. So after 5 hours on the bottom, an electric current dissolves a cable that drops the weight, the camera goes back to the surface, and then he brings it on board, and we watch the video. So in 16 drops, we found 57 species of fish, 8 of which are new to science. The area that the drop cam films is about 2 square meters. So the 16 drops are an area about the size of this stage. The area of the Pitcairn Islands exclusive economic zone is 800,000 square kilometers. It's the size of Alaska and California together. If in an area the size of this stage, we found 8 new species of fish, imagine how many hundreds or thousands of fish are there waiting to be discovered. Our deep exploration of the waters of the Pitcairn Islands showed that these deep reefs are totally intact. These seamounts have not been trolled. So most of this humongous marine habitat is still virgin. So we went back to Pitcairn to show to the local community what we found. And they could not believe it. You should have seen their faces. They told us, if you hadn't come here to do this expedition, if you hadn't shown us this footage, we would have no idea of what's around us. And they were very excited. And after getting out of the water at Dusi Atoll, the feeling, the thought that all of us had independently was, this place is so unique, this place has to be protected. There is no other way. How many places like this we have on the planet? And same thing with Henderson, same thing with the deep sea mounts. Less than 5% of the ocean is pristine. And the Pitcairn Islands has some of the few pristine environments left in the ocean. So there is only one sensible solution here. And that's what, with our colleagues with Pew, we discussed with the local community. And they were so excited, the community met and voted unanimously to recommend to the British government the protection of the entire 200-mile zone surrounding the island. And now, with Pew and the Pitcairn Council, we are working together to inspire the UK government to create what would be the largest marine reserve on the planet. 830,000 square kilometers. That would be not done yet, not done yet. We're just trying. Thank you, though. And again, that would be the largest marine reserve on the planet, the size of Alaska and California together. And we need to preserve these waters. We need to preserve this marine life. The world needs this marine environment as it is now. Because without it, the world would be a much poorer place. Thank you very much.